Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Why Karmelo's team keeps changing. Who are all of these people? We're going to get into it today. I'm going to talk to you guys about the 5 stages of early defense representation and how it changes, what's normal, what's not normal, and who the specific players are in the Karmelo Anthony case, but also how it happens generally. And then I'm going to tell you what I see as some of the missteps that are happening in the Karmelo Anthony case. You may be watching it and wondering, who are all these people? Why does it keep changing? We're going to get into that today. Okay, so first of all, it is common for defendants and victims, right? And I say victims because sometimes when we see these high-profile cases, it's not a defendant, but it's a victim, right? It might be a victim of a police shooting. It might be a victim of some type of a real estate building collapse or something like that. But it's very common for them to have multiple sets of people around them in the beginning. And even though it may look chaotic or it may look like there's trouble in paradise, that's not necessarily the case, right? They all serve very different, very necessary and important roles. So my name is Gray. Thank you for tuning in. This is Counsel Gray. This is my new channel. If you like what you see here, I invite you to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and leave a comment. I am responding at this point to all reasonable comments. Okay, so I've broken down what I'm calling early defense, right? Early in the process. There are 5 phases, and I'm going to walk you through each of the 5 phases. Okay, the first phase is sort of what happens in the immediate aftermath. And I want you to picture this, okay? And I'm going to use Karmelo's mother, for example. And I don't know who he called first or who got the message first. I'm imagining that it was his mother. We don't know how she got notified. We don't know if one of his friends rang the doorbell, if a friend called him. I don't think he would have called first because they had to get him to jail and checked in, etc. It could have been a teacher at the school. It could have been a teammate. We don't know how she got this message. But picture this. She's home with her children. She's got 3 other children. She's a stay-at-home mom. She might be cooking. She might be cleaning. She might be helping one of the kids with homework. And she gets a call. And the call says, "Come quick. Karmelo's been arrested." And she'll say, "Arrested for what?" "Murder." I think her last name is Hayes, right? "Murder, Miss Hayes." What does she do? She panics. She drops everything. She looks around. She's trying to find her shoes. She's trying to find the car keys. She's trying to call her husband at work. She's trying to figure out what to do with the kids. So this starts the process. She has no idea how to interact with the criminal justice system. She may or may not even know where the jail or where the police precinct is that he's being held. Now, sometimes you get a call and you have to go to the scene. Sometimes you get a call and you go to the jail. And I've seen all of them. Sometimes the parent gets the call or the spouse gets the call and they're going to the hospital, but it's pure pandemonium. So this is sort of phase 1. Okay. So right after the call, there's panic, there's uncertainty. And what is she doing? She's calling her friends. She's calling her family. Someone might be calling their boss. She's trying to arrange childcare because she's at home alone with these 3 children. Or maybe they're at work and they're trying to get the day off. They're trying to do GPS to get to the scene, to get to the jail, the hospital. They don't know what is going on. So what do you do in that situation? You're calling someone as you're racing down the street. You're calling your sister. You're trying to call your husband. You're thinking of the one attorney that you know, whose name you know. Maybe they did your will 5 years ago or whatever it is. Or maybe you're calling your brother and you're saying, "Brother, I need a lawyer. Who do you know?" And he gives you a name. Now, I want to give you a real life example of this. And I've seen so many versions of this, and I'm going to sort of do a story time and tell you about the things that I've seen. But there was one particular time I was in my early 20s, and I was supervising this program with these young teenage kids, maybe 12, 13, 14, in that age range. And I'm sitting in my office, and the kids were outside of the building, and they were on some kind of a break. And I'll never forget this day because I was eating white cherries. And I'll tell you why that's important in a minute. I was eating, someone had brought me some white cherries, and I was eating white cherries, and my door to my office flies open. And these 3 girls run in and they're like, Miss Gray, they got Jack." I said, "Well, who got Jack?" "The police, they got Jack, come on." So what do? My heart immediately starts pounding. Now, I'm not the parent, but I am the adult responsible for these kids who are out on their lunch break or whatever it was. I grabbed my walkie-talkie. Back then we had walkie-talkies. I grabbed my walkie-talkie, and I start running down the street. I ran maybe about 3/4 of a block, which is where the 2 police officers had my student in cuffs on the ground. As I'm running, my heart is pounding. I'm thinking, what am I going to say to get these people to get off of him? How am I going to tell this to his parents? How am I going to corral the rest of these students if I have to deal with this? Do I follow him to the precinct or wherever they're taking him? Or do I go back to the building with my students, right? It was pure pandemonium and I was terrified, right? Because I was the adult. So anyway, I managed to, and here's the thing. I managed to talk them out of handcuffing him and they sort of released him to me on the scene, right? And as I started talking to the officers, the cherry pit was still in my mouth from a couple of minutes ago when the girls first burst into my office. And I tell you this to tell you, this is how your mind shuts down when you get that call. I pray that if you have not already had that call, that you don't get that call. If you are a mother, a spouse, an auntie, or whoever, I also pray that you take the time to think beforehand what your first 4 steps will be. My brain literally shut off and I had a cherry pit still in my mouth, you know, after running all this distance. So it's very, very scary, okay? So the first people who are around the family, they are what I call the proximity picks, right? This is between hours 0 and 72. From the minute you pick up the phone or from the minute those girls burst into my office, right? That's hour 0, right? T equals 0. You call the person who is closest to you. You call the one attorney you know in town. You call your brother and he recommends someone, and that's the person that you call. But this is a very important person, and they may not end up going through, often they don't end up going through the matter with you, okay? So they may not even be a criminal defense attorney, and this is what we're going to see in Karmelo's case, okay? But what they do and why they're so important is that they get the representation started, okay? So the first lawyer that you get on the phone, you're like, meet me there, meet me at the station, meet me at the jail, meet me at the hospital, right? I'm heading this way, whatever. And you're asking questions to that first lawyer like, oh my God, what do we do? What type of lawyer do we even need for this thing? What does all this legalese mean, right? When you get to the station, there's going to be paperwork, or you get to the hospital, right? What's all this legalese even mean? How do I get my loved one out of jail? Can I see my loved one? Can you see my loved one? So this is an important person. This is an important resource for you to have. And I think in this case, this may have been the attorney Kim Cole and Billy Clark. And we're going to get into them in a little while, but this is why this person is so important. And a lot of people, if this person doesn't end up taking the case, a lot of people like to think that this person was fired. And that's not necessarily the case, right? This is the person whose job it was to meet and comfort and spearhead those very first hours. It's a very important role. Okay, so the other things that these first lawyers may do, they need to figure out what happened. They know how to talk to the police, right? They know the right questions to ask. They may, depending in those first few days or that first, you know, whatever it is, they may attend the preliminary hearing. They may have to locate the client in jail or at the hospital, right? A lot of times when you first get a call like this, you can't even locate your loved one. You don't even know where they are. You don't know what jail they're in, right? So this person knows how to locate them. The other thing that this first person may do, and that you really want them to do, is you want them to visit the client if they can, because you want them to tell your loved one, do not speak to anyone. Do not speak to your cellmate. Do not ask any questions, right? Because from the time this person gets taken away in cuffs, the next person who can give them some good advice is whichever lawyer you get in there. So if you can get a lawyer in there on the first or the second day to tell them to be quiet, that's absolutely critical. The other thing that this person may do once the smoke clears a little bit, they're going to go visit the scene. So they're going to take photographs. They may take some measurements. They're going to try to see if there's any evidence that needs to be preserved. Now, evidence that needs to be preserved is not like them picking up stuff in plastic bags with gloves on, right? It may be photographing the scene. How is the table situated? How were the chairs arranged? What was the closest exit? And the reason that you need these first lawyers to do this very, very quickly is because scenes change, right? They change. So for example, we saw Billy Clark and Kim Cole. They went to the scene and they said they wanted to put themselves in the position of Karmelo Anthony. You better believe that if they saw anything that needed to be photographed, they photographed it. Now, if they don't end up sticking with the case, they now have something that they can pass on to subsequent attorneys who didn't have an opportunity to be there at the time. Okay, so critical role. And I'll give you an example of how scenes change. In the Karmelo Anthony case, we know that, for example, security looked one way a week later. But on the day of the scene, or in the days right after the scene, things looked very different, right? The entrances looked very different. The bleachers looked very different. The feel, everything looked very different closer to the incident. If they had waited a week or 2 weeks, those photographs that they took at that point would have been useless because they would not have represented what happened on the day or at the time of the incident, okay? The other thing that they may do is they may make early bail arguments, okay? And they may do a habeas corpus. They may have to also make bail arguments. They may also make requests to preserve evidence. So what does that look like? Let's say the incident happened in front of a store. Let's say the incident happened in the hallways of the museum. These early attorneys, they may notify the store not to destroy evidence. They may notify the museum not to destroy evidence, meaning you are on notice that the evidence in your possession may be required in ongoing or upcoming litigation. You are hereby on notice to preserve it, okay? Critical stuff. So in this case, it looks like, okay, it looks like, now I am not on this case. I am not a part of this legal representation. I just did some research and some observing, and this is what I think is happening here, okay? Kim Cole, as you can see here, if you look at her areas of interest, real estate, compliance, which is business, civil rights, personal injury, business formation, business contracts. She's not even a criminal attorney. So she may have been, and I say may because I don't know, I'm just telling how these things usually go. She likely was somehow known to or connected to the family, or they were familiar with her name from seeing her on TV or hearing, and they reached out to her and she was able to do it. Okay. So also, if you look over here, these are screenshots of her website. Okay. She's not even holding herself out as a criminal defense attorney. She says, in addition to civil rights, personal injury, and estate representation, K. Cole Law provides a variety of business services and business operations, et cetera, right? So she was pulled in first, but she's not even a criminal defense attorney. So nobody expected her to stick to this case. So what does she do? Billy Clark was also pulled into this case very early. Chances are that he is someone who knew someone who knew someone. He probably has had previous experience either with the family or with the first attorney, and he was pulled in to tag team the thing. Again, the expectation here is that they're going to do the earliest work. And what did he say he did? Exactly what I mentioned earlier. He went to the scene of the school very, very early. The other thing is that they may have put in the first writ of habeas corpus. Now, I looked at the docket for this case, and it looks like habeas corpus was put in 2 times and maybe adopted the 3rd time. Don't worry about that, what that means, but that's just an early filing in the case. They may have put in that early filing in the very, very early days, like within 1 day of the incident happening. So here's the thing. Some lawyers either can't or don't want to do that early work. First of all, it is very disruptive to someone's law practice to get called into something of this magnitude on any given Tuesday or Wednesday. Your day, your week were already planned out. You may be in the middle of trial. You may have something else going on, right? So there may be scheduling issues. The other thing is that you may not be able to stop your paid work to take on something where you may very well not get paid for several months. These lawyers often spring into action before they can get paid for it. They're sort of springing into action on faith. Not always, but sometimes. Some, especially solo practitioners, they may not have the resources to stop what they're doing and take on this case and not get paid for it, right? The other thing is that they may or may not want the visibility of the case. Right? Some people just want to practice law in their offices, and they don't want to be in front of the camera. The other reason that some lawyers will not take this call or will not agree to sort of do this preliminary work is because the topic. I don't want to be associated with this particular type of crime. I don't want to be associated with this particular type of allegation. You can use your imagination for what people might object to. The third phase, right? The first phase was that sort of couple hours after you get the call, right? 0 to 72 hours. Phase 2 was when you get those early lawyers in place to do that early legwork before you even know what's going on and you have things that you want to preserve before they get wasted. The third phase is when you bring in the family representative, or what I call the handler. Now, often this is a community activist. It might be a civil rights advocate. Often it's faith-based or community-based, right? These are the people who are not necessarily handling the law, but they're handling the messaging, they're handling the family, they're handling the story. So let's look at that, because these people, this is who these people are, okay? These are these outside groups that come in and they do a lot of very important work. Now, in this case, if you look all the way to the left, it's Next Generation Action Network. This is the guy who's on this case, Dominique Alexander. He, and maybe this is why he calls himself Next Generation, but he has some big shoes to fill, right? Because this is what a Ben Crump does on a national level. When a case needs national attention, they bring in a Ben Crump. When a case needs national attention, in the past, they would have brought in an Al Sharpton, right? So Dominique Alexander is fashioning himself as a modern day civil rights advocate. And he's been around for a long time. We're going to talk more about him and sort of the role he's playing in the whole thing. Okay, so national level advocates, they get more calls than they can handle. If you haven't seen the documentary about Benjamin Crump, you should watch it. For me, it really changed my view of him. I came to appreciate him in a way that I had not before watching his documentary. But anyway, they get, and that documentary reflects the number of calls and requests that they get. So they get more calls than they can handle. And they usually come in once a case has revealed itself as appropriate for national advocacy. But until then, it's local advocacy. And that's where Dominique Alexander and his team are right now, local advocacy. Okay, so what's the role of, like I said, I call them handlers, but what's the role of this team of people? First of all, they're going to become suddenly the spokespeople for the case. They're going to be, in fact, they're going to be the way most people hear of the case. Okay, it's because of their media management, their attention management, that most of us even come to know of these cases, right? So what they create is a recognizable point person. So anybody who has questions about the case in this stage will go through this company. If there are secret witnesses out there that have information, they're going to contact these people. And that's what they're doing. They're saying, we are representing this family. If you have any secret evidence, you have any video, send it to us. And then they're going to also start doing public relations. They're going to start spinning the story in a way that counters the police narrative or the narrative of the other party, right? There's going to be messaging around that. The other thing that they're going to do is they're going to walk the family through how this thing is going to unfold over the next year or two, right? What you can expect, etc. They may provide security. I think we're seeing that in the Karmelo Anthony case. They're providing security. They're going to open up their Rolodex because they've got connections. And the beauty of a local advocate is that they've got connections and they've got tentacles all through the city. The other thing, and the reason I put these in bold, is because this to me is one of the most profound things that this type of an advocacy organization brings to a case. It puts the state on notice that the world is watching what you're doing. It puts the state on notice that this defendant or this victim has social support, right? They're mobilizing. They're doing social mobilization, and they're letting the state know. They're letting the police know. They're letting the district attorney know to be on the up and up, tread lightly, because I will bring the eyes of the world onto this issue. The other thing is that they bolster along the same lines, they bolster the presence of the defendant, or like I said, sometimes it's a victim. They say that it's basically saying this person is not alone. Like, we have resources that we can bring to bear on this issue, versus defendants and victims who don't have this type of exposure. These are the cases that we never hear about, right? They can't figure out how to get, remember when I said that the national organizations, they get more calls than they can handle? Most people cannot get this kind of attention. In fact, this kind of attention takes what would normally just disappear as a case and turns it into a high profile case. This is what they're skilled at. They are skilled at taking cases that happen every day and turning them into high profile cases. We talked about how the early attorneys are brought in. This is a picture of the early attorney, Kim Cole and Dominique Alexander. Okay. As it turns out, she is or was on the board of this organization. So however the family got to her, she got the family to this next generation action network. Or it could have been reversed. It doesn't matter. Somebody in the family had a connection to one of these people. If they got to the next generation action network first, then they were like, we've got an attorney for this. She's on our board. She's our general counsel. And she is. Attorney Cole is actually the general counsel for Next Generation Action Network, right? So these connections are how we heard about this case so fast and how it has blown up the way that it has, because one person reached out to one person to another, and then boom, it's all over the media. And here is a filing online from them, and it says here, Dominique Alexander is the president and Kim T. Cole Esquire is the director, right? So they are closely linked. And I don't know that part has come out in the telling of this story. I think they've been presented as sort of parallel things, but they actually are very closely related. And I saw somewhere she introduced herself as the general counsel. So not just the director, but also the general counsel. So that's how these connections work. A lot of people don't have access to this network. Okay, so this is who all of these people are, right? When you see Karmelo being released from jail and you're like, who are all these people? We see Dominique Alexander on the right. I think this is his director of security in the Google glasses. You guys have heard about the video of the director of security in the Google glasses. I don't know who the other people are, but at least one of them is on the team, possibly the fourth one. We don't know. But this is what it looks like. It's sending a unified front. This kid is not alone. Watch how you treat him. We have resources that we will bring to bear on this case. Okay, so this is a very, very powerful visual. Okay, so other things that the handlers do, right? The Al Sharptons of the world, the Ben Crumps, the Dominique Alexanders, they offer emotional support. They spearhead early organization and coordination of things that are outside of just the legal process. The other thing I said is that they keep an eye on the process, right? They are watching how this young man is being treated. For example, I'm going to play a clip for you. So you may have heard that after Karmelo was released on bail, they did a press conference with the Next Generation Action Network, and Austin-Metcalf's father attended. He said he was there for good reason. He thought that they could put a unified front in front of this thing, and he thought that it could calm, it could soothe society a little bit. This is what he says. But look what happens, and you tell me what you think the optics of this are. These are the police officers who escorted Mr. Metcalf out of the family's press conference, and you tell me what you think. Okay, so I want to tell you what I saw when I looked at that, and I'm going to replay it so that you can watch it again. When they take him outside, if the Next Generation Action Network had one of their people out there escorting him, it would have been great. It doesn't look like they did, but here's what I saw. I saw them walking out. I heard one of the officers apologizing to him. I'm sorry, I'm just doing my job. Then I see that same officer reach out to shake Mr. Metcalf's hand. He held his hand there for a little while. And then another police officer reaches out to shake his hand. And then after both of those officers shake his hand, the officer closest to the door, I think that he realizes that the optics of this are not good. And he goes to slam the door in front of the camera person. Okay, now let's play this again. And you watch for that and tell me if that's what you see. All right. That's what I think that I saw. Which says to me that the police are not neutral in this matter. Conversations like this happening in secret places. It would have been nice if someone from the Next Generation Action Network were there. So phase 4, right? After you've made your proximity picks and you've got your advocates in place, this is when you start being strategic about your picks, right? The smoke has cleared, things have settled down. And now you can start really thinking about what you're looking for in long-term counsel. It's less frenetic. It's more strategic. Now, you may keep the early lawyers, but often they change. Because as we saw, Kim Cole is not even a criminal attorney, right? So the expectation that she would ever stay on was not right. But these people, because they're being more strategic, the family is going to actually audition these people the same way you would audition lawyers if you had an issue. Okay, so how do they do that? This is the selection criteria. And if the early attorneys don't meet this criteria, then they're not going to move forward in the case, okay? So the first one, obviously, is how much experience do you have related to the matter? How much community, longevity, ties, and roots do you have? And I can tell you as a practicing attorney, the more connections, the more friends you have, the more people that you've bought Christmas apples for, candied apples, whatever it is, the more people that you can get to say things to you off the record, the easier your life is as an attorney, right? So that's something you want to be looking for in your attorney. And then obviously competence related to the matter, right? How competent, how strategic, how good of a lawyer are you in this particular area? The next thing is the chemistry with the family and the team, right? There is a team in place, even though it's likely to shuffle. But what's the chemistry that you have with the family, with the team? Do you vibe? Do they like you? Do they like, right? Also, unfortunately, monetary negotiations and terms. Now, you have to remember at this point, this early in the case, most defendants and victims don't have any money, right? They may be able to put a little something in, but they're not going to be able to pay you often for a while. Some attorneys cannot do that. They just don't have the resources and the business capacity within their own firms to do that. Also, some are going to be too expensive and the family can't do it, right? So the negotiation about the money, the terms, the payments, all that kind of stuff, the family's going to be looking for someone that they can work with. The other thing, and this is critical, and this is what Mike Howard, their current attorney, Mike Howard has been very, very good at this. It's the languaging of the issues. How is he talking about what happened? What does he sound like when he gets on the mic and he's talking to the public? At this point, the language is more restrained. Early in the case, you were trying to counter the police's version of what happened. So you were making big claims. You weren't talking very, strategically. You were trying to get the population behind you. You were performing. At this point, this languaging, now that you're further into the case and you're getting the actual counsel, it's much more restrained. And if you listen to the language that Mike Howard has used, the district attorney has used, versus the language the family used, versus the language that Karmelo's advocates use, right? You've seen that it has definitely come down. Okay, so the first attorney, and nobody even remembers that this guy was on the case for like a day. The first attorney that they hired in this phase, right now, this is attorney number 3. The first two were Kim Cole and Billy Clark. Derek Walpole, or Walpole, however he pronounces it, he was on this case for about a day. So I looked up this guy, and this is what I found. He's attorney number 3. Okay, this is a screenshot of his website. He says in the yellow, I handle primarily criminal matters. I prefer trials to plea bargains, right? If you want to fight it out in court, if you have no choice but to fight it out in court, this is the guy you want, right? Based on that, I prefer trials to plea bargains. I have tried well over 300 cases to verdict, ranging from capital murder to speeding tickets. I have never prosecuted anyone. Now, here's the thing. What he's talking about, and this is a jab at all those prosecutors who decide to quit being prosecutors and switch over to the defense side and hang a shingle. People always say, well, yeah, where does your loyalty lie, right? So this is a jab he's making. I have never prosecuted anyone. And then if you go down a little bit, he says, if you want to plead guilty, you could do better than me. If you want to fight, get in touch. He's positioning himself as a warrior. His middle name is King, right? So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, this guy sounds pretty good. And then I saw two things that let me know immediately he was not going to make it. This is the first one. He says from the courthouse steps, because he went to the courthouse first. Nobody remembers this. I could barely find this footage, but he says on the courthouse steps, I know that my client said it was self-defense. I don't have any reason to disbelieve that, but I need to develop facts, talk to people, and figure out what's going on before I make any statements about what I think happened. I don't have any reason to think it wasn't self-defense at this time. As soon as I heard him say this, and I was watching the interview when he said it, I said, oh no, he's not going to last, right? This is not what you want to say to a family that knows that their only shot is self-defense. This is not what you say. It sounds like he is 50-50 weighing not using self-defense. Right. So I knew when I heard this, that this guy was not going to last long. And then I saw something else that made me know, okay, this guy is not going to last long. Watch this. The minute that I saw that, I said, oh no. I said, this guy's not going to work out. I don't know why, but I just was like, I don't see that working out long term. And sure enough, he showed his face one time and he was gone. Do you guys remember him? I mean, this guy, if you had blinked, you'd have missed him. So now who is the attorney? Mike Howard, right? So they hired that guy, and for whatever reason, he didn't last. So now they have hired this guy. Now, I want to say about this guy, Mike Howard, and I have mixed feelings about this guy. There's something about him that I really, really like, and then there's something about him that I'm not sure. I'm going to tell you what that is, okay? So here's his website. Now, I want to say this. A lot has been said about the experience of the different people, and we're going to get into that in a minute. All four of these people are solo practitioners. Not a single one of them has a second attorney in their office. Kim Cole is a solo. Billy Clark is a solo. Derek Walpole is a solo. And this guy, Mike Howard, is a solo. So one of the things that you look at when you're picking counsel is, in addition to the things that I said, you look at the resources. How well resourced is the firm? Do they have investigators? Do they have paralegals? Do they have other counsel to help them? All of these four firms are very lean operations right now. So what that means is the attorney that takes it will outsource those things, but it's not like it's going to be an in-house thing, or sometimes they may hire somebody for the duration of the case. But all of these are very lean operations, right? If my life were on the line, I would want to work with a firm that had investigators, paralegals, junior lawyers, right? All the things. But this is the nature of criminal defense in most cases. All right, so let's listen to what he said, which is why I think the family likes him. Oh, I'm sorry. This is his website, okay? So these are the cases that he advertises on the front of his website. These are the cases we handle. Nothing here says murder. Domestic violence, acts of violence from assault to murder, right? He combines it right there. Drug crime, sex offenses, DWI, and then a whole bunch of other cases, right? Versus Walpole, who he said capital murder. I do capital murder cases, which is the most serious case you can do. This guy kind of describes it as acts of violence, right? So I don't think the website was screaming out to them. I don't know what it was, but here's what he said. He said, every Texan has the right to defend themselves when they reasonably fear for their life. Self-defense is a protection that applies to every one of us. There are two sides to every story. Now, when you hear that, A family that knows that their only chance is self-defense, isn't that more appealing? Don't you want to hear that? What he's saying to them is, I believe in self-defense. You don't have to convince me. I'm going to try to make this argument. So they like this. Now, sometimes people get charmed, right? This guy, silver tongue, he'll say the right things. Let's hope that it turns out to be the right choice. I also like his disposition. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Tell me in the comments what you think about his disposition, his comportment when he was talking. But these are the words that you want to say to a family like that. Not what that other guy was saying, like, well, I don't know. I can't say what I think just yet. It's too early for that. Phase 5, right? So now they've made their strategic pick. Looks like there were 2 of them in a row. They've settled on this guy, Mike Howard, for now. He may or may not survive. We'll see. But phase 5, and this is where money helps. All right, someone in the comments said, yes, he sounds appealing. Okay, so this is where money makes the difference. This is why people with big defense purses win. Already, as soon as they start, I said that lead counsel starts lining these people up as soon as the money is right. As soon as they start releasing those funds, the portion of it that's going to go to legal defense, because now the family has come out and clarified that some of it will go to their living expenses because the husband had to take off from work, etc. But anyway, as soon as the money starts flowing towards the lawyers, even now, sometimes even before the indictment, which has not happened in this case yet, they're going to be lining up appellate counsel, jury consultants, and expert witnesses. They're not waiting on this. Here's why you bring in the appellate counsel now, right? Appellate counsel is the lawyers who would take the case. Say Karmelo gets convicted, then it would go to appeals, right? So this person might be a year or more out. But if you have money to throw at your defense, you bring this person in now. And the reason you do that is so that they can start preserving issues for appeal. They're not going to have to reconstruct it in 2 years. This person is on it now. They're looking for all the missteps. They are looking for all of the things that they can use later for appeal. Also, jury consultants, right? They're already, if they're well-resourced, right? If the money is there, they're already lining up jury consultants. They're watching chat rooms. They're trying to see how deep the bias against their client goes. They're in the secret spaces. They're in the chat rooms, right? They are trying to see what percentage, and this is a real thing, right? In jury selection, when you try to get your jury moved to a different venue, the question becomes, how deep into the public is the bias against your client? Is right, and it's almost like a saturation level, right? Is this jury pool in this jurisdiction 26% saturated with bias, 48% saturated, 85% saturated? The higher the number, the percentage of saturation is, the more likely you are to get a venue change. Now, remember, Karmelo needs a venue change. The reason he needs a venue change is because he's in a predominantly white and other, right? Other who like to act white or think they're white or want to be white, right? And in this county, I think I heard that it was less than 9% Black, which means that Black people are underrepresented in this county, as well as probably liberal people are outnumbered there, right? So anyway, I don't want to get into that, but he needs a new venue. So these people are going to be starting now. They're going to be gathering evidence and proof that we cannot get a jury here, or what we need to do to get a jury. This is the difference. You know how you hear the difference between people who have money and don't have money? People with money or people with big give, send, go accounts, they can bring these people in now. Massive, massive difference. Expert witnesses also. They can start lining up the finest expert witnesses in the business. This is important work, you guys. I can't even stress this enough. And most people don't even know that this is happening as early as it's happening. All right. So those are the 5 steps of the early legal process. Right now we've got Mike Howard. And so now things are sort of stabilized. And now, maybe I should have put this in as stage 5. Sometimes the attorney who actually takes the case to trial is a different, that's going to be your trial dog. Right? There are some lawyers who their entire practice is the days that they're in court, meaning that the attorneys who work the whole thing for a year or 2 years or whatever it is, they basically hand over a box to the trial people and the trial dog will work up a trial strategy. This is less common in criminal because most criminal attorneys at the trial level do trials. But in very high stakes trials, you might want to bring in a trial dog, right? And that literally is what they're called. You go out, you find a trial dog, someone who will try this, someone who can finesse a jury, who can work the judge, who can work the witnesses, etc. Okay, so that would be phase 6. Mike Howard may or may not be the one who takes this actually to the courtroom in front of the jury. Let's talk about missteps. And I'm going to talk about the missteps the missteps in this case, because there have been a couple. Sometimes you miscalculate, right? And in the frenzy of the beginning, sometimes it happens that you miscalculate. The big one is going to be infighting, egos, and turf wars. Okay. Money and delayed payments. Like I said, some attorneys have to leave because they're not getting paid. Also, families don't have an understanding of how these payments work, right? You would be amazed at how surprised people are. Well, I mean, I guess it's not that amazing. People give you their life savings, and that amounts to about 5 hours worth of work. You put in 10 and you ask for some more money, and they're like, I just paid you. They can't appreciate how fast this money goes, right? How fast representation burns through money. Some lawyers can't do that. They cannot stop their practice and wait for you to pay them, okay? The other thing, and I think that this may be what's happening in Karmelo's case, is that there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians, okay? Everybody is trying to be the point person, and I'm going to show you guys a clip, a clip in a little while. And then there's the grandstanding and the posturing and the users, the opportunists, the grifters, the camera chasers, right? Some people want to be associated with big name cases because they want the media attention, okay? And like I told you, some people will avoid it for that exact same reason. I don't want to deal with people outside my office. I don't want to deal with death threats. I don't want to deal with anything, right? So they won't even agree to sign on to this. Sometimes the people that do, they just want to be in front of the camera. They want to make a name for themselves. And I think there may also be a little bit of that happening here. And then finally, family issues intensify. This is a high stress situation. It involves money. Sometimes it involves putting your house up for collateral. If there's any fissures in the marriage, they will intensify. Another place that I've seen this is when the parents of the person and the wife or the spouse of the person or the baby mama, and nobody can really figure out who should be leading this thing. They all hate each other anyway. And this is the thing that just brings it to the surface. I'm going to tell you about one case that I remember, and this wasn't even my case. I was just standing in the building. And at the same time, both doors open. The father flies in from one side and the mother, I think, flies in from the other side. They just happen to get to the police station at the same time. The mother had on, you know, that cape or that apron that they put around you when you go to the barbershop or you go to the hair salon and you're getting your hair washed in the sink. They put that plastic cape or apron thing on you. The mother runs in with that on. The father runs in, they almost collided into each other. But the thing that I remember is that they ran in from different directions, right? So these two people were not, obviously they weren't still together. And the mother obviously was at the hair salon when she got the call. She jumps up, gets in her car, and she comes, or someone drives her or whatever. She hadn't even, remember the cherry pit that I told you was still in my mouth when I got down the block to go rescue my student? This woman hadn't even taken that thing off of her neck, right? That's how intense this thing is. But anyway, they came in from different directions. So a lot of times the family will start falling apart too. And I'm sure you've heard of cases like this, right? Where a kid dies or something and the parents, they end up getting divorced shortly after. It's a real thing, you guys. I think personally that the Karmelo Anthony team is a little bit messy. And I'm going to play some clips for you. And this one, I actually have to fast forward it manually. So bear with me. This is something that gets said that I just didn't think needed to get said.
Howard also adds the attorneys that CBS News Texas just spoke with yesterday have no experience with murder cases. It's unclear if they're going to stay on this Anthony case in any capacity alongside Howard. Howard also adds the attorneys that CBS News Texas just spoke with yesterday have no experience with murder cases. It's unclear if they're going to stay on this Anthony case in any capacity alongside Howard.
I don't know if you guys caught the way she's stressed. Now, granted, this is not an audio of Mike Howard saying it, right? Mike Howard is the current attorney number 4. Mike Howard said these people have no experience with, right? I just feel like it didn't need to be said. It didn't need to be said. It stirred up something that didn't need to be there. It also painted that, I think, maybe I'm reading too much, you guys tell me in the comments, it almost is trying to paint them out as incompetent grifters or something like that. I didn't really appreciate that. But I will say this, like we already talked about, Tim Cole has no criminal trial experience, and Billy Clark, he's a fairly young attorney, right? I think I read on his page that he graduated from law school in 2018 or something, and maybe passed the bar a year later. So he's a fairly new attorney versus Mike Howard, who's been doing this for 20 years. So, maybe he's not the right, maybe Billy Clark is not the right choice. I actually asked Billy Clark. I don't know him. I reached out to him for something else. And while we were talking, I asked him if he wanted to comment on either the shuffling in this case or the process generally. He did respond, which I appreciate. His response was that he wishes to honor the client, the attorney-client privilege. I don't think the question prompted any information that was protected by client privilege, but by attorney-client privilege, but that was his prerogative, and he certainly did not have to respond. So I appreciate him for that. But anyway, he is off the case, and I just feel like Mike didn't need to say that. Mike Howard didn't need to say that. Again, assuming he said it with that tone. He may or may not have. Okay, so that's the first misstep, bringing in people who maybe are not experienced enough, maybe butting heads, maybe they're all playing the card that they've got, right? If Billy Clark was fighting for the representation, he would play whatever card he had. If Mike Howard is fighting for the representation, he's going to play whatever card he has, right? And it can look to the public chaotic, right? It can look like these people are incompetent. Okay, so let's talk about the real misstep. Let's talk about the big misstep in this case. So the spokesperson that this family has chosen is this guy, Dominique Alexander. And I appreciate this young guy. I really do. I appreciate his commitment to civil and social justice for people, right? I appreciate that. But this here is a whole misstep, okay? I wasn't sure where this image came from. So I actually did go back into his criminal record, and I was able to link up charges with these dates and times, right? So I think someone cut and pasted this together, this image, but I was able to find remnants of most of these cases. So this is true. Now, this guy is, I don't know if he's a career felon or what. I remember when I used to work with clients, I would see them if they had multiple of the same charge, or they were constantly being arrested for the same thing. I would say, man, this is not your hustle. Like, you need another one. So this is crazy. And so sure enough, people have harped on this, right? And it may have been in response to the fact that some Karmelo supporters brought out that Austin's father had that sexual assault conviction. This is as far as they could go, because the family, the Anthony family, seems to be very clean, right? So they bring this guy out. Now, I'm not one to harp on pronouns or anything like that, right? I don't even get, I'm too old for the pronouns thing. But in this case, when your name is Dominique, and these are your mugshots, some pronouns would be helpful. I don't know what's going on here, but this guy, okay, let me just go on to the next one. These are his other things. These are more recent, right? His pronouns are clearer in these pictures. But here's the thing. This may not be a total misstep. There are pros and cons to using a guy like this, right? The redemption story, because here he is on the right as he looks today. So he is clear, and he's a minister, right? So somewhere in there, I don't know what that means. Did he go to seminary? I don't know, whatever it is. But there's pros and cons to this type of a lead guy, and let me tell you why. Oftentimes, people like this are very strong in the community, okay? The community might see themselves in this guy, The other side and sort of more educated people are cringing at this guy, but he definitely has an audience. He certainly knows the legal process, if nothing else, right? But this guy may be a very effective community mobilizer because the community knows guys like this. It may turn out to be a good thing. I don't know. I cringe a little bit, just his English, his grammar, especially if you're presenting yourself as a spokesperson. But here's the thing that I know. Guys like this, guys like Al Sharpton, some of you guys are old enough to remember the old Al Sharpton who was like 400 pounds. He had a press-in curl, maybe a jerry curl before that. He used to wear shiny, colorful tracksuits everywhere. He has become very refined in his old age. But at the time, he was just enough of a spectacle that he could bring attention to things that otherwise would get brushed under the carpet. And for that reason alone, these people are extremely valuable. This young couple, the Karmelo's parents, they could not have brought this to the national attention on their own. They needed this guy. They need an Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton has brought more cases to the collective consciousness that otherwise would have gone swept under the rug than anybody. We need these guys. We clown them. They sound crazy. Even Ben Crump. If you've heard this guy speak, and this guy runs a big law firm. I think I counted 20 lawyers on his website. When you hear him talk, it's a little bit cringe. But he can speak to the people. He can get the people mobilized. He can let the cops know we are watching. If you want to have problems with Black people, you mess this up. That's what these guys do, and I appreciate them for it. So there's pros and cons to this type of a case, right? I appreciate this young guy. I appreciate what he's doing, but this thing, the confusing pronouns, this is a mess. But we're going to see how this thing plays out. Okay, so that's what I have for you guys. Those are the 5 stages that I see and the missteps that have happened in this case and generally tend to happen. Again, my name is Gray. This is my channel, Counsel Gray. I appreciate those of you who are here live with me. If you like what you saw here, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and leave a comment. I am responding to comments. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you.